God's covenant with David encompasses all of Israel's earlier covenants, taking in land, people, and promise. The resulting story of David will decisively shape the story of Israel to come. According to the chronicler, what David brings to the story, even more than military victories, is a heart of worship. The king is more concerned with the beauty and organization of Israel's devotion, songs, and sacrifices than he is in the strength and administration of his army. As David ages and sees the ending of his time approaching, he turns his attention fully to planning for the building of God's temple. David is committed to working and investing in what will last beyond him. David is driven by a vision of God's home on earth with his people becoming a reality. But God tells David that he will not be the one to build the temple. He has waged too many wars. There is too much blood on his hands. But David can organize, calculate, and make arrangements for this great project. So he does this with all the time he has left. David believes all of the nation's resources and all of his wealth are meant to be directed to a higher goal. He calls all of the senior leadership of Israel together to focus their attention on a single great task that lies ahead. Be strong and do the work, he tells them. Solomon, son of David, then takes firm control of the kingdom, praying to God for the wisdom to rule Israel well. Immediately, he turns his attention to building the temple that David dreamed of. The temple itself is a microcosm of the new world that God is working to bring to reality. Its walls and pillars are carved with palm trees and pomegranates. It is filled with symbols of the earth, sea, and sky. Inside the most holy place, where God's presence is, are two giant winged cherubim. Heaven and earth are being brought together, a vision of where the story is going. God's fire falls from heaven, and His glorious presence fills His newly built home. God has come to dwell with His people. Solomon's kingdom thrives. The moment is one of the great highlights in the entire history of the nation. But it will not last, for the hearts of both the people and their kings will change. The sons of David do not all have the heart of David. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, follows him as king and immediately manages to alienate his fellow Israelites and split the nation in two. From this point on, God's people will be divided, north and south, Israel and Judah. The kingdoms will struggle to be the light to the world that God's covenant had called them to be. The story moves on, reporting mostly on the rulers of Judah, the line of David. The future of God's people and God's plan lies here. The test for each of them is whether they will give themselves fully to the Lord, as David their father did. Some do, some don't. Some begin well, but end badly. Perhaps the real battle in all of these stories is the struggle between pride and humility. These leaders are not always sure about whose glory it is that they should be seeking.